History remembers empires by their collapse. Rome fell. Babylon crumbled. The pyramids stand as monuments to civilizations that vanished into dust. But what about the empires that controlled something so valuable, so universally desired, that their names became synonymous with wealth itself? What happens when a single man controls more gold than entire continents combined? This is the story of Tenkamenin, a king who never converted to the religion of his wealthiest traders, yet commanded their absolute loyalty. A ruler who could buy and sell kingdoms, yet chose to sleep on the ground beside his subjects. A man so rich that Arab scholars claimed he could field an army of 200,000 warriors, yet so wise that he spent more time listening to peasants than commanding generals. His throne room glittered with gold nuggets the size of human heads, but his greatest treasure was something money couldn't buy: the unshakable trust of every soul in his empire. Here's the mind-blowing part. While medieval Europe wallowed in the Dark Ages, scrambling for scraps of silver, Tenkamenin controlled so much gold that he intentionally restricted its supply to prevent economic collapse across 3 continents. He wasn't just rich, he was the central bank of the medieval world. But absolute wealth attracts absolute danger. To the north, Islamic empires hunger for his trade routes. To the south, rival kingdoms plot to seize his gold mines. Inside his own court, the question whispers through torchlit corridors. What happens when one man controls the entire global economy? Can justice survive when every dispute can be settled with gold? Can tradition withstand the corrupting influence of infinite wealth? This is the journey of how a West African king built the richest empire on earth, maintained it through brilliant diplomacy and iron will, and faced a choice that would determine the fate of millions: compromise his principles for prosperity, or risk everything for a higher ideal. The year is 1067 CE. The place is the Ghana Empire, not the modern nation, but a vast medieval superpower stretching across what is now Mauritania, Senegal, and Mali. Imagine a territory larger than Western Europe, where camel caravans stretching miles across the Sahara arrive weekly, loaded with salt, copper, and silk. Where traders speak a dozen languages and pray to different gods but unite under one law: the word of the king. The capital, Kumbi Saleh, is a metropolis of 30,000 souls, larger than London of its time. It's actually 2 cities in one: a Muslim quarter of stone mosques and wealthy merchants, and the royal district where the king maintains the traditional African beliefs of his ancestors. This religious duality isn't a weakness, it's Tenkamenin's genius. By honoring both traditions, he creates a commercial paradise where everyone wants to do business. But understand this: the Ghana Empire doesn't mine gold. That's the secret to its power. The gold comes from regions to the south, lands shrouded in mystery, protected by fierce warriors who guard their mines with legendary secrecy. Tenkamenin controls the routes, the trade, the distribution. He's the middleman between African gold and the medieval world's desperate hunger for it. One decision from his lips can make merchants into princes or reduce kingdoms to poverty. On this particular morning, as the sun bleeds orange across the Sahel, Tenkamenin sits in judgment. A dispute has arisen. A merchant has been accused of cheating local traders. The accused is wealthy, influential, connected to powerful Islamic kingdoms in the north. He offers a bribe that could fund a small army. But there's a witness, a poor farmer whose testimony could destroy this merchant's empire. The king must choose, and that choice will reveal why his name echoes through history not as a tyrant, not as a conqueror, but as something far rarer and more dangerous: a just ruler in an age of chaos. Let's discover how an African king became the man who quite literally wrote the rules of global commerce. Tenkamenin doesn't seize power through violence. He inherits it, and that might be worse. Born into the Soninke royal lineage around 1030 CE, he grows up in the shadow of his uncle's legacy. The Ghana Empire is already powerful, already wealthy, but it stands at a crossroads. Islamic traders from the north push for conversion. Traditional chiefs in the south resist change. Gold flows through the empire like a river. But rivers can flood, and rivers can run dry. As a prince, young Tenkamenin learns a crucial lesson. He watches his uncle receive a delegation of Muslim merchants. They offer gifts of silk and perfume, then make their request: convert to Islam. The commercial benefits would be enormous: direct trading partnerships, religious solidarity, cultural exchange. His uncle listens patiently, then speaks words the young prince never forgets. "I honor your faith. My empire protects your mosques. Your merchants grow wealthy under my law. But I will not abandon the beliefs of my ancestors to gain what I already possess: your respect and your gold." The merchants leave satisfied. Why? Because the uncle has given them something more valuable than religious conversion: stability. In a world of chaos, the Ghana Empire represents order. Traders don't care which god the king praises. They care whether their caravans reach their destinations safely. They care whether contracts are honored. They care whether disputes are settled fairly. This is the inheritance Tenkamenin receives around 1062 CE, not just an empire, but a philosophy. His first test comes swiftly. A major caravan is ambushed 3 days' journey from Kumbi Saleh. Bandits kill 12 traders and make off with salt worth a fortune. The survivors demand justice. The caravan master, a powerful figure from the Almoravid territories, suggests military retaliation. Burn the nearest village as a warning. Imagine yourself in Tenkamenin's position. You're newly crowned. The watching world judges whether you're strong enough to hold your uncle's empire together. Military force would send a clear message. The Almoravids would respect strength. But something doesn't add up. The bandits didn't take the salt. Too heavy, too difficult to sell. They took something more portable: gold dust being carried back north. Tenkamenin sends his investigators to the village. Not soldiers, investigators. They discover the truth. The bandits were hired by a rival merchant trying to destroy the caravan master's business. The actual villagers had nothing to do with the attack. Some even tried to defend the caravan. The king's judgment is swift and public. The rival merchant loses everything: his property, his trading licenses, his place in the empire. The caravan master receives compensation from the seized assets. But here's the brilliant part. The village that tried to help receives a reward: tax exemption for 5 years, royal protection, and a new well, funded by the king's personal treasury. Word spreads across the Sahara like wildfire. Ghana isn't just rich, it's fair. You can do business there without fear of corruption. If you're wronged, you'll receive justice regardless of your status or religion. If you do right, you'll be rewarded even if you're poor. The result? Trade explodes. Caravans that once bypassed Ghana now route through its territories specifically. Merchants pay Ghana's taxes gladly because they know they're paying for something real: the rule of law. But this first triumph plants seeds of future conflict. The rival merchant Tenkamenin destroys is connected to the Almoravid movement, a religious and military force growing in North Africa. They don't forget insults, and they've begun to look at Ghana's wealth with hungry eyes. Tenkamenin's justice has made him legendary, but legends attract challenges. The Ghana Empire under Tenkamenin becomes something unprecedented in medieval history: a multicultural, multi-religious commercial superpower built on mutual respect rather than conquest. By 1065 CE, his capital Kumbi Saleh has transformed into the New York of the medieval world. The Muslim quarter now houses 12 mosques. Scholars come from Cairo, Baghdad, and Cordoba to study and trade. The market district operates with a sophistication that wouldn't be matched in Europe for centuries. Written contracts, banking systems, credit arrangements that span continents. Meanwhile, in the royal district, Tenkamenin maintains traditional African governance. Each morning he holds court not in a throne room, but in a pavilion open to all citizens. The ceremony is magnificent. His guards wear gold-threaded tunics, horses are draped in cloth of gold, and the royal drums announce his arrival with rhythms that carry across the city. But any citizen, regardless of status, can approach and petition the king. An Arab geographer named al-Bakri, writing around 1067, documents what he learns from traders. When the king gives audience to his people, to listen to their complaints and set them to rights, he sits in a pavilion around which stand 10 pages holding shields and gold-mounted swords. On his right hand are the sons of the princes of his empire, splendidly clad and with gold plaited into their hair. The governor of the city sits on the ground in front of the king, and all around him are his ministers seated likewise. But here's what al-Bakri misses, what the travelers gossip about in market stalls. After the formal audiences end, Tenkamenin often walks through the city in simple dress, stopping at food stalls, asking ordinary people about their lives. He doesn't want filtered information from bureaucrats. He wants truth. This leadership style creates fanatical loyalty. When a drought strikes in 1068, threatening the southern regions, Tenkamenin opens the royal granaries, not just to his own people, to everyone in the empire, including the Muslim merchants. When advisors protest the cost, he responds, "A hungry man cannot trade. A desperate man becomes a bandit. Feed people, and you feed prosperity." The strategic brilliance becomes clear when the drought ends. Those same merchants, whose lives were saved by Ghana's generosity, become permanent advocates for the empire. They spread word through North Africa. Ghana is different. Ghana protects its people. Ghana is worthy of trust. But power attracts predators. The Almoravid movement, a religious and military reform movement sweeping through North Africa, has unified the Berber tribes under a banner of strict Islamic law. Their leader, Abu Bakr ibn Omar, sees Ghana's wealth and independence as both an opportunity and an insult. An opportunity because controlling Ghana means controlling global gold trade. An insult because a pagan empire shouldn't possess such wealth and influence. In 1069, Almoravid forces probe Ghana's northern borders. Small raids, testing defenses, gauging response times. Tenkamenin faces a choice: military escalation or diplomatic genius. He chooses something unexpected: respect. Rather than mass troops on the border, he sends envoys to the Almoravid leadership. The message is simple but profound. We honor your faith. 12 mosques in our capital protect your believers. Our gold funds the construction of mosques from Morocco to Egypt. We are allies in prosperity, even if we worship differently. But if you choose war, understand this: we will defend our sovereignty with every resource at our disposal. Simultaneously, he quietly moves his army into defensive positions. Not aggressive, not threatening, but unmistakably prepared. The message to the Almoravids is clear. Ghana prefers peace, but can wage war. The Almoravids calculate the cost. Taking Ghana by force would require tens of thousands of troops, years of desert warfare, and the disruption of the very gold trade that funds their expansion. More importantly, Muslim merchants throughout the Almoravid territories plead with their leaders. Don't destroy the goose that lays golden eggs. The raids stop. An uneasy peace holds. But Tenkamenin knows it's temporary. The Almoravids' hunger for conquest and religious fervor can override economic sense. He needs to strengthen Ghana's position before the next confrontation. He implements a brilliant strategy: vertical integration of the gold trade. Previously, Ghana controlled the routes but not the supply or the final markets. Now, Tenkamenin establishes royal trading houses in major North African cities. He sends his own agents, trained in both commerce and diplomacy, to act as Ghana's representatives abroad. These agents don't just sell gold. They build relationships, gather intelligence, and create economic dependencies. Cities from Massa to Cairo come to rely on Ghana's regular gold shipments. Disrupting Ghana means disrupting their own economies. At the same time, Tenkamenin strengthens ties with the gold-producing regions to the south. He respects their independence, never trying to conquer them, but offers military protection against raiders and favorable trade terms. These southern kingdoms begin to see Ghana not as an exploiter, but as a partner. By 1072, Ghana has created an economic ecosystem so interconnected that attacking it would hurt everyone. Tenkamenin has weaponized interdependence. His military during this period swells to reported numbers that stagger medieval comprehension. Al-Bakri claims the king can field 200,000 warriors, including 40,000 archers. Even if exaggerated, the real number is substantial enough to deter direct assault. But here's the key. Tenkamenin rarely deploys them for conquest. Instead, they serve as the world's most expensive deterrent force. The king's personal wealth during this peak period becomes legendary. Gold nuggets reserved for royal use, some weighing several pounds, sit in his treasury. He could, theoretically, flood the market and crash gold prices globally. He doesn't, because he understands something modern central bankers would recognize. Controlling supply is more powerful than hoarding. Tenkamenin has become more than a king. He's become a force of economic nature, a human institution, a living guarantee of stability in an unstable world. But no reign lasts forever, and the higher you rise, the harder the fall. By 1075, Tenkamenin is in his mid-40s, old for his era, and the weight of his impossible position begins to show. The fundamental contradiction at the heart of his empire can no longer be ignored. Ghana's prosperity depends on maintaining good relations with Islamic traders, but his religious independence increasingly offends the growing Almoravid movement. Meanwhile, the traditional chiefs of his own empire begin to question whether Muslim merchants have too much influence in Kumbi Saleh. Picture the pressure. You're Tenkamenin, sitting in your pavilion at dawn, watching the sun illuminate dust motes in the air. 2 letters arrived the same morning, one from an Almoravid imam, pleading with you to consider conversion. Think of the unity it would create, the trading opportunities, the cultural exchange. The other from a council of traditional chiefs, warning that Muslim influence threatens to corrupt the old ways, the ancestor worship, the spiritual foundations of Soninke identity. Both are right. Both are wrong. Both choices lead to disaster. If he converts, he betrays everything his uncle taught him about maintaining independence. The traditional power base crumbles. The southern gold suppliers, who trust Ghana precisely because it maintains African traditions, might redirect their trade. He'd trade political autonomy for religious conformity. If he openly rejects Islam, he risks war with the Almoravids and alienates the merchants who fuel his empire's economy. The Golden Age ends in bloodshed. So Tenkamenin does what he's always done. He walks the razor's edge. He increases funding for mosques in the Muslim quarter. He ensures Islamic scholars receive royal patronage. He mediates disputes using Islamic law when both parties are Muslim. But in the royal district, he continues traditional ceremonies, maintains ancestor veneration, and makes clear that religious freedom is Ghana's foundational principle. In my empire, he declares during a public audience, every man's faith is his own. The Muslim prays to Allah. The traditionalist honors the ancestors. The Christian merchant worships Christ. All are protected under one law, mine. It's a magnificent statement of tolerance, but it satisfies no one completely. The tension manifests in smaller ways. Trade disputes become religious arguments. Merchant rivalries invoke theological differences. The careful balance Tenkamenin has maintained for years begins to fracture under the pressure of growing extremism on both sides. Then comes the betrayal that nearly breaks him. One of his most trusted advisors, a man who grew up alongside him, who helped implement his trade policies, who knew the inner workings of Ghana's administration, accepts a bribe from Almoravid agents. Not gold, something more valuable, a promise. If Ghana falls to Almoravid conquest, this advisor will govern the occupied territory. The plot is sophisticated. Weaken Ghana from within. Provide intelligence about caravan routes, military deployments, and gold shipments. Create enough chaos that the Almoravid invasion appears as a liberation, rather than a conquest. Tenkamenin discovers the conspiracy through the same network of ordinary citizens he's cultivated throughout his reign. A market vendor notices suspicious meetings. A soldier overhears compromising conversations. A scribe spots falsified documents. The evidence is overwhelming. The advisor is guilty. The penalty for treason is death. But executing a childhood friend, a man he trusted with his kingdom's secrets, would mean admitting his judgment was flawed. It would raise questions. If the king can be betrayed by his closest companion, who else might be compromised? The empire's stability depends on trust. Public execution of a high official shatters that trust. Tenkamenin faces his darkest choice. He holds a private meeting with the traitor. No guards, no witnesses. Just two men who once dreamed of building something greater than themselves. Why? Tenkamenin asks. The answer is almost understandable. Because this can't last. You've built something beautiful, but it's fragile. The Almoravids will come eventually. When they do, I wanted to ensure that Ghana's institutions survive, even under occupation. Better a managed transition than total destruction. So you would sell our freedom for the illusion of continuity? I would trade your idealism for our people's survival. It's the same argument that has haunted empires throughout history. Compromise principles to preserve power, or maintain principles and risk losing everything. Tenkamenin makes his decision. He doesn't execute the traitor. He strips him of all titles and wealth, then does something extraordinary. He exiles him with enough gold to live comfortably in foreign lands. I want you to see what you would have destroyed, the king says. Live in the kingdoms you thought superior. Experience their justice, their tolerance, their treatment of the weak. Then ask yourself if Ghana was truly fragile, or if it was the strongest thing you ever knew. The exile becomes a legend, a testament to Tenkamenin's mercy, but also his steel. He won't kill the man, but he won't let betrayal go unpunished. The message to potential conspirators is clear. Ghana's justice is inescapable, but not cruel. The Almoravid plot collapses with their agent's exposure. But the damage is done. The empire's invulnerability has been questioned. Tenkamenin has aged. Succession questions begin to whisper through the court. The Ghana Empire stands at its peak in 1076, as Tenkamenin's documented reign nears its end. But peaks are dangerous places. The only direction from the summit is down. Tenkamenin's death around 1076 CE marks not the collapse, but the crystallization of his legacy. What he built outlasts him by decades. The immediate aftermath shows the strength of his institutional design. The succession proceeds smoothly, a rarity in hereditary monarchies. The laws he established continue to govern trade. The religious tolerance he championed remains imperial policy. The economic network he created sustains West African prosperity for another century. But here's the complex truth about power. Even the most enlightened empire faces entropy. The Almoravid movement eventually does attack Ghana. Decades after Tenkamenin's death, the empire's power wanes. The gold trade routes shift. New kingdoms rise in the south, Mali, then Songhai, and Ghana becomes a memory rather than a reality. Yet Tenkamenin's influence transcends his empire's lifespan. He proved something revolutionary for his era, that prosperity doesn't require conquest, that religious tolerance can be a strength rather than a weakness, that justice, fairly applied, creates more stability than military force ever could. Consider his long-term impact on Africa's historical trajectory. The Mali Empire that succeeds Ghana adopts many of Tenkamenin's principles. Mansa Musa's legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, during which he distributed so much gold he crashed Cairo's economy, follows trade routes Tenkamenin helped establish. The tradition of West African commercial empires built on trade rather than tribute owes much to Ghana's model. For the Islamic world, Tenkamenin represents a puzzle that challenges simplistic narratives. He wasn't Muslim, yet he facilitated Islamic scholarship and commerce. He funded mosques while maintaining traditional beliefs. He proved that religious identity and economic partnership need not align perfectly to succeed. Modern historians studying Christian-Muslim animist coexistence in medieval Africa inevitably examine Ghana's example. For the global economy, Tenkamenin's reign marks a crucial moment in the development of international trade systems. The concept that trade requires stable institutions, reliable justice, and protection of contracts, principles that seem obvious now, were revolutionary in the 11th century. Ghana pioneered these ideas and proved their commercial value. But let's acknowledge the moral complexity. Tenkamenin's empire was built on slave labor. Though less extensively than later Atlantic systems, slavery existed. His justice, while famous, was still absolute monarchy with all its inherent dangers. His religious tolerance, while admirable, was also pragmatic calculation. The gold he controlled came at environmental and social costs to mining regions we can only guess at from this historical distance. So what's the verdict on Tenkamenin? Was he a visionary leader or a lucky monarch who inherited prosperity? A champion of justice or a skilled manipulator? A defender of tradition or an opportunistic pragmatist? The answer, frustratingly and beautifully, is all of the above. He was human, capable of wisdom and calculation, mercy and steel, idealism and realpolitik. He built something remarkable not by being perfect, but by being thoughtful. He maintained power not through brutality, but through building systems that made brutality unnecessary. The lesson for our modern world? Power concentrated in single individuals is inherently dangerous, no matter how enlightened. But institutions built on principles of justice, tolerance, and mutual benefit can outlast their creators. Tenkamenin didn't make Ghana eternal, but he made its principles portable. They migrated to Mali, influenced Songhai, and echo in contemporary debates about global governance, religious pluralism, and economic justice. In an age of polarization, Tenkamenin's legacy asks uncomfortable questions. Can we maintain principles while compromising with those who don't share them? Can prosperity be built on justice rather than exploitation? Can leadership mean restraint rather than domination? His gold has long since been spent. His empire has crumbled into dust. Even his capital, Kumbi Saleh, is now an archaeological site buried beneath Saharan sand. But the idea he represented, that wealth and wisdom need not be enemies, that power and justice can coexist, that different beliefs can prosper under one law, remains provocatively alive. What would you have done in his position? When every choice risks everything you've built, when betrayal comes from friends, when principles clash with survival, how do you lead? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by these forgotten empires that shaped our world, subscribe for more stories of the leaders who built civilizations with something more precious than gold. Ideas that refused to die. Because in the end, Tenkamenin's greatest achievement wasn't controlling the medieval world's gold supply. It was proving that a man could hold that much power and still choose wisdom over wealth, justice over convenience, and principle over expediency. That's a legacy worth more than gold.